Hi, everyone, and welcome to a special episode of The Joy of Poeting. We have Sara Beth Brooks here, who is our special guest and who is going to be demonstrating an original invented form called the Boxcars. And I'm just going to give a little intro for Sara Beth. Sara Beth Brooks, she, they, is a white, queer, and disabled self-taught poet and teaching artist living on Nisenan Miwok land, known today as Sacramento, California. She facilitates online writing workshops and other spaces for tender hearts. Sara Beth self-published their mixed media zine In Bloom in 2024, which explores being disabled during the first few years of the pandemic. Her poetry has appeared or is forthcoming in Rogue Agent, Big Windows Magazine, Tiny Spoon Literary Magazine, Breath and Shadow, and elsewhere. You can read more of their published work at their Linktree, linktr.ee, as in the Linktree, / Sara Beth Brooks. All right. And now I'm going to spotlight you. All right, Sara Beth, you can take it
Thank
away.
you. I thank you so much for having me, Anne Marie. I'm really delighted to be here. As I shared with you beforehand, it was exciting to put together this demo for everyone. So thanks everyone for being here too. I see friends in the room. I see new faces. That's exciting for me too. I love talking to new people about my work. Welcome. My first name is Sara Beth. I use she and they pronouns, and I really like both. So please feel free to use both for me. I'm going to introduce you to my original poetic form, which is very weird to say out loud, but it's Anne Marie's fault. I put this together in a workshop that she had at Tiny Spoon last year called Form Fetish, where she very casually invited everyone in the room to create their own poetic form, which I did not know I was going to be doing that day. And this kind of just came to me and it grew from there. And so I am going to show you boxcars today. I'm going to put a couple of links in the chat for you. So this is a link to a demo document if you would like a copy of the demo document that you can just follow along with. And then that copy will not be the same thing that I'm writing on. I'm going to put my writing on the screen, but that demo document walks you through the process if you would like to take that with you or if you want to work on it side by side with me. It includes the definition of boxcars. Boxcars is a poetic form with, no, I'm going to have to give you the full definition. Give me a second. Boxcars is a poetic form with 4 stanzas, 6 lines each, and each line has 6 syllables. And then the stanzas are arranged in 2 columns, so that there are 4 total stanzas, but in a square. And they're read top to bottom and then left to right, so 2 columns. I was inspired. I'll tell you a little bit about my inspiration for it. When the prompt came, the thought that I had was I've been writing a lot about my family, and my grandfather was a gambling addict. And so I grew up around card games, dice games, and then unrelated to that, I went to college in Las Vegas, Nevada. And so I have been around gambling and around addiction my whole life. And when you roll dice, especially when you roll D6 dice, and you get 12, it's called boxcars because the way that the dice line up next to each other kind of looks like boxcars. And that's where this idea came from, and that's why 6 is such a huge part of the form. So that's what inspired it. And you've got that on the worksheet as well in case you want to look back at it later. And then I wrote, let me share my screen with you real fast. In that same workshop, the best version of this poem that I've written, and so I'm just going to share with you that. I've written other versions of this poem, but I'm going to show you the best version, which is the one that I worked on for that workshop with Anne Marie. This is Boxcars for my grandfather. And this is an unpublished piece, so I know this is going on the internet somewhere. For whoever sees this, this is an unpublished piece, so don't go repeating it somewhere else, please. This is Boxcars for my grandfather. The moment the pension check comes, he cashes it in for chips. That money needs to grow threefold to make rent, and the heat stays on. Fourfold to afford a cake for Janet on her birthday, which is next week. He deals in full houses, the cards, and the 5 children at home. This pair of twos won't help much. He bluffs, which is only another way to say he lies. At the table are men with a casual relationship to truth. Some are risking more than others. Chips fly as stakes rise until the last man folds. He gathers the prize. Dealer shuffles, table resets. He exhales smoke and looks at the clock. I'm gonna put this on my screen while I'm also writing over here. This is my version of the document. And that should help give you a little bit of structure while I'm writing. A couple of, are you gonna let me copy it? I don't think that Canva's gonna let me copy it. Never mind. A couple of thoughts that I have while you're thinking about this form is to pick a theme or a prompt. I've included some prompts in the document that I shared with all of you. And so you can pick one of those prompts, or you might have another theme that comes to mind as you think about this. I included train prompts and game prompts and also addiction prompts, because those are all pieces of this form for me. Organizing your syllables, it's a form that's dependent on syllables. And so you may want to use my favorite tool is howmanysyllables.com. It is linked for you at the top of the demo form. And I see Nikki is here as well. So let me share the demo form one more time. Where's my chat? Hi, Nikki. It's lovely to see you. Or to see your presence and here. I feel like I haven't seen you in a while. Okay, so picking a theme or prompt, organizing your syllables, word banking your theme, which you're going to watch me do. And then my strong suggestion to you is to write the stanzas in a column before you try to organize them into boxes. Because if you try to organize them into boxes first, it might get, for me, it gets confusing. And so that's my suggestion to you. And in the demo document, I've left you spaces for that. And then I've also left you the table shape down here that I use to shape the poem. You can choose to use this shape. I have the left boxes, left justified, the right boxes, right justified. And as you copy text into it, the boxes will expand, right? And then you can use the table tools in Google to change the border color so that the border goes away. And that's how I have formatted it on the page. It's brand new. Maybe you'll format it differently, and that's okay. So all of those are kind of my things for you up front. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a demo for you, kind of putting this together. And we will see how it goes. We're going to do it live. I've never written live in front of other people, so I'm going to have fun with this. First thing, I'm going to encourage you to pick a theme or a prompt. I thought about this a little bit ahead of time, and my theme is going to be Railroad Town. I live in Sacramento, California. We're the end of the Union Pacific line here. My grandfather, in addition to his gambling addiction, was also a Union Pacific Union Railroad operator. And so it ties into the theme for me. Maybe you'll pick something else. Some possible prompts for you are the first time or a memorable time you rode a train, A struggle with addiction, either yours or your relationship with somebody else's, or maybe somebody else's struggle. Your favorite or your least favorite game, that could be interesting. What does it mean to be from your side of the tracks? Oftentimes, when we think about that, we think about class and race privilege. That could be interesting as well, whichever side of the tracks you may be from. And then also a potential crossroads or decision point. Those are possible prompts for you. I'm going to start with Railroad Town. And so I'm going to start with a word bank. And because I'm sticking so closely to the railroad theme, I want things like tracks and whistle, engine, caboose. That could be fun. Caboose. It's got two O's. Um, I want things like crossroad or crossing, lines, like train lines, graffiti. The all of the trains here are covered in graffiti. There's a museum in town that I've been thinking about today. And then I also have a section here for special words. Maybe as you're generating your word bank, you're like, I have to use that word. I'm really excited about using that word. You can either highlight it or asterisk it or whatever, or you can pull it out into the special words pile. Your choice. For me, it just helps me to have a separate list of special words. What else are we going to do for a word bank here? Oh, so town. So hometown, city, town. This is also a city that's filled with trees. Um, we're a valley. We're a farming town. Um, the railroad was built by Chinese folks, Chinese immigrants. It was also built because of the gold rush. So those are some things that I'm thinking about. And I kind of want to use caboose because that word makes me smile. And I want to use graffiti. Um, those are the only two I'm just like really stuck on. And now we write in six syllables lines, which is tough to do. And so I may not even be capable of finishing it in the 45 minutes or so we have left, but I'll let you know that when you're writing in syllable counts, it's just difficult. If you try to do it today and you aren't successful at it, one of the things that I had written in my getting started guide is to say no to perfection and say yes to shitty first drafts, because that's just going to happen sometimes. In fact, most of the time. So, as I'm writing this, I want to write about where I'm from because that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Um, Contractions are a good way to help you with syllable count. So, I'm is one syllable, I am is two syllables. That's an option. Um, I'm from the little town. That's six. Uh, at the end of the line. Six, at the end of the line. I count with my fingers because that's the best way for me to count. When I write sonnets, I count that way too, and then I forget. But six is easy to do on one hand. Uh, I'm trying to start a line with my grandfather. Grandfather has so many syllables. Family is only two. My grandfather worked the, okay, we can get that in there. Worked the, which is now six syllables. My grandfather worked the tracks. worked the tracks, but made his money at the card room. Not the card room. 4 syllables. I need 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So enjambment is a concept I think everybody in the room is probably familiar with, but you can end a sentence in the middle of a line of poetry, and then you can start a new sentence. Maybe as you edit, you decide that that's how you want to move the poem around, but enjambment is a useful tool for your poetry. Not the card one. I always want to throw a poker metaphor into these poems as I wrestle with my grandfather. So now I want word bank. I'm going to go back to my word bank. Flush, straight, full house. We already did full house in the other poem. All in is a poker term. Bold. Thank you, Allison. I think the word I want here is turning the check into the rent. The check into the rent. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm at 6. So I'm ready for a new stanza. Again, even though I'm in the middle of a line, that's okay. Poetry doesn't have to end on a period. Poetic lines don't have to end on a period. Like magic. Like magic each month. The kids never knew the difference. That's going to get me in trouble. Kids never knew the difference. So I'm going to swap out a 1-syllable word for a 2-syllable word. Kids never knew any difference. 3 syllables there. I'm going to double check difference because I think it can probably be 2. But the internet says 3. So we're going to go with 3. That's how you use this syllable dictionary. Whatever word it is that you're putting in, it will tell you how many syllables it is right here, which can help when you're trying to write a form like this. Difference. Money comes from where it comes from where it comes from. When you're 10 years old. You're 10 years old. From where it comes from when you're 10 years old. Okay, so we've got 2 more syllables on this, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1 more line. That's a period, though, at least in draft form. When you're 10 years old, so I need 2 syllables there. Hey, Angela, welcome. Let me get you a copy of the template that we're working off of. This template will walk you through the boxcar format. It's got a definition at the top. No problem. Anne Marie's going to put it online at some point, so you can watch the beginning of it too. Um, the template has the definition at the top. It's got a way to walk through it as you're trying to write this form yourself. So when I get to a pausing point like this where I'm like, I'm not quite sure what the next line is, I always go back to my word bank. And especially these two special words that I haven't gotten to yet, caboose and graffiti. I feel like I want to bring the poem back to the place. I've spent some time describing lineage here, and so now it's time to bring it back to the place. I like the word whistle too. None of these things have to be set in stone. You can move them around always, right? It not only is it your art, but also um, having it be set in stone is a very restrictive way to create art. My suggestion is don't do that. Do what you want, but that's my suggestion. Um, so caboose, graffiti, whistle. I need some sort of time phrase here. I can still hear the whistles. You're 10 years old. I can still hear the whistles from my living room. I'm at 6 lines, so I'm starting a new stanza. My living room. I'm trying to get to caboose from here because I really want to use caboose. Oh yeah, Angela, good question. Let me show you the example poem. Yeah, so boxcars, the way that I set it up is that it's meant to look like the shape of a boxcar, like a train. And so this is the sample poem that I wrote in Anne Marie's workshop a few months ago now. And so it's 4 stanzas, 6 lines a stanza, 6 syllables a line. And then my suggestion to you is that you write it straight down the way that I'm doing on the document and then format it. Because if you want to make changes and things like that, it's harder to do once it's in the table format. And what I'm using over what I've offered you all over here is this table format that I use after I'm done writing the piece in order to shape it. And this table format's already set up with left alignment on the left columns and right alignment on the right columns. And then the whole thing, the shape is inspired by the roll of the dice. My grandfather was a gambling addict, and I grew up with addicts in my family, not just him, but his children as well. And so I grew up around dice games, card games, things like that. And when you roll a 12 in dice games, you usually are using D6 dice. When you roll a 12, it looks like boxcars and it's called boxcars. Like, um, that's the slang for it. And that's where this came from. So hopefully that gets you caught up. Yeah, no problem. So I'm in the third stanza down here, and I'm working towards 4 stanzas, 6 syllables each. And part of what I did was to generate a word bank about my theme. My theme is Railroad Town. So I generated this word bank. I've got some special words that I definitely am trying to work in, and I am headed toward Caboose. that is where I'm headed right now. Um, And part of what happens here in town is that you get stuck behind trains and it's like traffic. You have to text someone and be like, "Hey, I'm stuck behind a train," and you have to wait half an hour for the train to clear, depending on where you're going in town. But we have the tracks really close to us. There's tracks on either side of my house. And even the other night, we could hear the whistles in the house with the windows open. Uh, oh, I feel like the whistles are little ghosties. Mm, still hear the whistles from my living room. Lineage is a three-syllable word. Echoes of lineage. No closer to caboose, though. Mhm. I'm gonna break away from the piece for a second and try and write some lines about caboose so that I can get them back to the piece. I often write out of order. This is like weird for me to write in order like this. I want to give you all a good demo, but oftentimes I write out of order and then move back things back into the piece. So I'm gonna try and write some caboose lines separate and move them back into the piece. That might be a helpful thing for you, especially putting together a poem that's line count uh, stretched and also syllable count stretched, right? So, what do I want to say about the caboose? Um, what is the caboose a metaphor for? It's just a fun word to say. I'm the caboose of the family line. I may not use that, but that's fun to think about. There's no children after me. I did not have children. I'm the end of this line. Um, what else can I say about a caboose? The caboose is usually where the engine is. I don't know if you all know that about trains, but typically the engine pushes the train from the back. When we're talking about like freight trains and stuff like that. Um, the caboose always has graffiti on it, and I want to use graffiti too. Graffiti covered caboose. Oof. Um, I don't want to use stain because stain's got such a negative connotation for graffiti. I need a one syllable. Uh, oh yeah, no problem, Angela. Um, doing train words today because this box. I decided to go in that direction. What direction you decide to go in is your own, right? I'm looking for a one syllable word that means to be covered in something, to be graffiti full. That's an interesting play on words. Graffiti full caboose. And then, of course, there's a very common phrase, bringing up the rear. Um, and then also when you're stuck at the train's crossing, waiting for the caboose, you like everybody like cranes their neck and looks down the line because as soon as you can see the caboose, you know it's about to be over and you can like take your car out of park and like turn your radio back up. I see Anne Marie nodding, so I'm not the only person who lives in a train town, but um And then also when I'm at a train crossing, I'm crossing the tracks. And there's definitely metaphors to be had there. Pushing the train of the caboose of the family line. Say this family's caboose, because that's not very cool. um, Even here comes the caboose. Here comes the caboose. Listen closer. All right, I'm abandoning caboose for the second, and I might get back to it. Let's see where I'm at right now. I'm from the little town at the end of the line. My grandfather worked the tracks but made his money at the card room, turning the check into rent like magic each month. The kids never knew any difference. Money comes from where it comes from when you're 10 years old. I can still hear the whistles from my living room, little echoes of lineage crawling down the track, crawling down the track. Even tracks is still one syllable. Tracks to the end of the line. Crawling down the tracks 2, that's 6. The end of the line is 5. My line is the last. You get it, Anne-Marie. Thank you, Angela. I appreciate that. I kind of like that line too. And lineage is such an important part of what I write about that it makes sense to call it out, especially in a poem like this that traces where I'm from. Um, I'm the last stop on the line. I'm the last stop on the line. Crawling down the tracks. That's 6. The last stop on the line. A railroad town. We 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is 5. A railroad town. Built by immigrants. I don't want to use a metaphor for that. People. Mm, immigrants is 3. Built by. I'm just gonna say it. Chinese immigrants when they couldn't even become citizens. That's too long, but sometimes when you're writing, it's better to say what you mean, and then you can go back and make it pretty. That is also a tip that I use when I'm writing. Town built by Chinese immigrants when they couldn't even become citizens. That's just too many lines. That's too many syllables. Citizenship. Citizenship. That's 5. And so I'm in the 4th stanza now. So I've only got a few lines left. Typically when I get to this point, I'm like, oh my God, I have so much left to say. What am I gonna do? I have to cram it all in. And that is how I feel right now because I still don't have caboose. I still don't have graffiti. And I still feel like I'm not quite in this piece. And so there are other pieces in this piece that are close, but it's not me yet. So, oh yeah, I definitely would, Anne Marie. Shitty first drafts, right? Anytime that I'm writing, especially a form like this that is more complex than something free verse, yeah, I would definitely work on trying to pull that out in revision. I'm also what oh, was it George Carlin who created swoopers and bashers? I think I think I'm right about that, but if I'm wrong, somebody correct me in the chat. But swoopers and bashers is a phrase to describe how people write. Some people write top to bottom and they just let it all go out and then they deal with editing later. And some people like me, I'm a basher, go through and edit as I go so that by the time I get to the end, I feel like I have draft 1.5. Um, rather than draft one. Also because I have trouble with like stream of consciousness writing. Yeah, Allison understands. Um, I just feel like I don't like this. I'm gonna take this line out. Built by no shady first drafts. Let it be a bad first draft. From citizenship, I need one more syllable here. Something, something I didn't have to worry about. I am still trying to figure out more ways to bring light to my whiteness and my white privilege in my writing. And that's part of where I'm headed with these lines. Uh, what I kind of want to, I'm going to talk this out before I try to write it down. My grandfather's buried not far from here in family plots that my great grandfather bought before the Depression. Um, and they're like, I don't know, 2 dozen of them or something like that. So there are still plots there that I could be buried in, like that I have inherited through generations. And that's a lot for 3 lines, but I'm gonna try. um uh Worry about the family. I'm even gonna just do family by the river. Plots by the river. Mm. Plots by the river where? He's Oh, yeah, Angela, great question. What did I say about white privilege and writing? So, as somebody who is white and is a settler on Turtle Island, I do my best to bring pieces of that into my writing because it's context for who I am as a person, and it's context for what I bring to the page. And so I'm continually trying to bring those things onto the page. um my uh my grandfather and his grandfather were here for a long time before um I was born, and that makes me from a line of settlers, and that is something that for me and my politics and my values is very important to make sure that I'm considering when I'm writing. So that's part, and that's what I'm trying to do with these lines about citizenship and something I didn't have to worry about. Those lines may not make it through revision because now I'm very interested in this concept about the family plots. And oftentimes when I write first drafts, I try and write this stuff in, and then I can't quite make it, especially stuff that is about my own whiteness and my relationship to white privilege. I try to write it in, and then it seems to stick out like a sore thumb. Like it's not really meant to be there. And like saying it is a lot less connected to the piece and a lot more um, saying it for the sake of saying it, right? And when I'm developing my work, I really like to be aware of the things that I bring to the page, both privileges and marginalizations. So those are some of the things I think about that. But if you want to talk more about it, I love to talk about that topic, and I'd be happy to talk to you more about it. Um, he's buried with his kin. And so I'm at 5 lines. This is the closing line that I'm writing right now. And I'm going to let it be a draft, right? I didn't get all of the things that I wanted. You know, that some of that can be for editing, some of that can be for a different poem. One of my favorite poetry teachers said to me, "You don't write one poem about the thing, you write 100 poems about the thing." And so I encourage you as you're writing poetry about whatever you're writing about, don't try to just squeeze it into one poem because you think you have to write the poem on that topic. I promise you, there's not one poem on that topic. There are 100 poems in you about that topic, maybe even more. Um, yeah, that's Megan Valley, Anne-Marie, who said that. And I, not to me directly, but to a large group of people that I was a part of. Oh yeah. Thank you, Allison. Yeah, so I took some lines out further up here. Let's see if I can grab the version history for you. I'm running through the version history so that I can see. So here was where I was wrestling with some of um the end of the line question, right? How to describe myself as the culmination of this family line and not that it's continuing. And so I played with these lines a little bit until I both liked the sound of them and also um, felt like they fit within the rest of the piece. And then, so crawling down the track didn't quite fit. There was a longer, oh yeah, I came down here and I did all this caboose work at the bottom. I couldn't figure it out, right? I couldn't quite figure out how round peg, square hole. And so part of the reason why I chose to keep that out of this piece is you know it. As part of the reason why I chose to keep that out is that it didn't seem like it was working. And while I like the concept, sometimes a concept is a good concept, but not a good concept for the piece. And just because I enjoy the way the word caboose sounds, doesn't mean that I should try to like pigeonhole it into my piece. I think everyone in the room should write a poem with the word caboose. I dare you. Um, and then tag me on Instagram when you do it because I would love to see it. Um, the caboose work I did at the end, I wasn't getting anywhere, right? I wasn't finding anything that matched with what I was already writing. And Angela, I hope you do. I really do. I just think it's a fun word. And so I opted not to continue with that and I opted to go back. And what you saw me do at that point was to read from the top. And so I read from the top to see where I was at and to see if there was another way to continue the poem at that point. And then further back here, um, these are all caboose lines you're seeing down here. And then this doesn't really have any edits to it. Uh, the word any there rather than the word the. The kids never knew the difference, is what I would have said, but the doesn't fit with the syllable count. Any fits with the syllable count. That's just a small change. So those are some of the things. And then when I go back and edit it, which I think I had already said, when I go back and edit it, I'm really interested in where this had gotten to about my grandfather and my family also being buried in town, because it gives uh, a sense of completion to the poem. It ties it back to the beginning that I'm from this place, but also that my family is not just from this place, but is still in this place. And so that's more likely to take up these last 6 or 8 lines in a revision than my attempt to talk about how the railroad was built by Chinese immigrants. Now, I could write a different poem in this format or in a different format that talks more about that. And that's oftentimes what I've had to do with discussions of race and privilege is I've had to make them their own pieces because I'm still working so much of that out that um, it doesn't sound like it fits yet with the piece. And so in a broader collection about railroads or about family and like the way that railroads tie into my family, that piece that doesn't exist yet and this piece and the first piece we looked at could all live in that collection together, and then that collection would make sense thematically. So those are like some of my thoughts, Allison. If you've got another question about it though, you let me know. And in the meantime, I'm going to try to find a banger to bring this home, um, because I'm constantly looking for that last line. I don't know about y'all as poets, but that last line always evades me. And I'm like, where are you? Show up, show your face. I want to find you. um, and I've only got 6 syllables to do it because of the restriction of the form, right? And so um, I'm sitting over here counting syllables. Waiting for me to join him is 7. Um, someday I would join him is 6. Um, I may, because the other thing about that is I inherited 1, 2, 2. I inherited. Oh, that's a long word. 1, 2. Um, and also I want to say that's also too long. I might join him there someday. That's also 7. And so one thing you can do when you're working with um, a piece like this, let me finish the piece, Angela, and then I think Anne Marie would probably love to talk about this topic, and I'm happy to talk about it too. One thing you can do with a piece like this when you have a 7th syllable or one hanging syllable is to look to the previous line to see if there's a syllable you can remove. And so in this case, I could remove his and move I up. And now I've got he's buried with kin. I, as the 6th syllable, might join him there someday. And I'm going to let that be the poem for right now, knowing that there's revision, knowing that I really want to put the word caboose in it and I can't get there. And then what I would do with this piece in order to arrange it like boxcars is to take each stanza. Stanza 1 goes in this box. Stanza 2 goes in this box, down and then across. Stanza 3, top right-hand box. You may need to adjust the justification. In order to do that, my preference is to have them justified opposite each other. You may decide differently. There hasn't been one of these published yet, so you may decide that it looks a little different. When we think about modern forms like the duplex or even the rib cage, the way that they're published is different by different people. And so, as the person who created this, publish it however you want. Um, you do you, right? I don't believe that art has to be that uh, restrictive. And so then I play with the table because sometimes what was happening here is that the line was a little long. Yeah, the rules are that there are no rules. And so then, now that I've got it formatted, I'm going to use the table properties to take away that border. And now it's arranged in the shape. There you go. Yeah, and we can do questions and answers. I put my website here. I'll put it in the chat. I know Anne Marie does this every week and with different forms and different types of poetry. And so you may decide you want to come back for that. Happy to answer your questions about boxcars or anything else. And we can start with Angela's question. What do I and Anne Marie think about lyrical poems? Anne Marie, do you want to talk about it first? I've been talking a lot.
Hi, I'll take your spotlight off so then we can see each other. Angela, I have a follow-up question. What do you mean by lyrical? So I have often heard about lyric poems, which mostly just focus on like an emotion, that the poem itself, as opposed to being a narrative or I don't know, other kinds of modes like
I mean poems that rhyme like a song, like a
oh,
song.
poems that
Yeah.
rhyme like a song.
Yeah. Like, what do you think? Do you think they are less intelligent or sound less intelligent?
I mean, a lot of poetic forms
More
include
elementary?
rhyme.
What do you think?
Yeah, a lot of poetic forms, especially historic traditional poetic forms, include rhyme. That's part of the poetic form is that they have a rhyme scheme. I personally struggle with rhyme because I feel like it forces me to use words and phrasing and syntax that are unnatural. So for example, if I said some or if I wrote something like my son just turned 1. Okay, that's a normal syntax. But then in order to rhyme with it, I might say uh um uh his the life he will live he begun or something like that, you know. And so the syntax ends up being forced to rhyme with in order to meet the rhyme scheme or whatever. When people can do it well, I bow to them. um it's not my forte to do it. And I find that I'm very impressed when people use internal rhyme versus end rhyme. You know, if you do too much end rhyme, for me it seems a little Dr. Seussy. You get a little on the Dr. Seuss side of the and then it ends up being metered, so it's like da 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 da, and then I feel like I don't know, even if it's talking about something uh I don't know, adult, not for children, it still feels a little lullaby-ish. But that's just those are my thoughts. I love when there's a good rhyme and it's surprising. That's another thing is that sometimes when we're rhyming, it's a little too on the nose as well. We end up using phrases that you're expecting, right? So let me think. Um, uh, this evening I drank a glass of wine, and as I sat on the patio, the sun did shine, and so, but if I were to write that without having the restriction of the rhyme, I would never use the sun shined because you always hear that phrase together. So maybe I would say the sun wrestled through the clouds to my face, or something, trying to use a different kind of verb that's not as expected. Um, that being said, uh, I don't have it on hand, but I just finished Taylor Bias's collection. I done clicked my heels 3 times, and she has a number of sonnets in that book. And so sonnets, they have that A B C D. You would never realize that you were reading rhyming poetry because the enjambment that she uses, the rhyme doesn't end at the end of the sentence. So you're not reading da 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 and having the rhyme at the end. The rhyme just kind of flows through your the way that your eye moves through the poem. Brilliant. Brilliant. It's just so brilliant. Like I hope her book wins the Pulitzer if it's still viable to do so. It's so brilliant. I'll put it in the chat. Um Taylor Bias, and I done clicked my heels 3 times. And she also has at least one duplex in the collection that I remember because I used it as an example when I was doing the duplex myself on the show. So I guess that's what I have to say about lyrical poems. Sarah Beth Brooks, do you wanna add anything to what I just rambled?
Yeah, so Angela asked a very specific question, which is, do you think they sound less intelligent? And I don't. think they sound less intelligent. No, not at all. I think it's a skill, right? And Taylor Bias does it really well. And there are a number of other poets who have invested time in that internal rhyming kind of scheme, where the rhymes don't come at the end of the line, but they come mixed into the middle of lines, so that there is a musicality to the poem without the kind of meter that Anne Marie was talking about. But no, I think that learning, if you know how to rhyme, because what you said when Anne Marie was like, I struggle with that, you were like, really, I'm the opposite. If that's your strength, you should lean into it, because that is a skill that not everybody has. And learning how to rhyme that way can take a lot of time. When you think about spoken word poets and poems that are like wordplay and stuff like that, when I think about that, I think I hear a lot more rhyming there than I hear in potentially the poems that I looked at today, or the poem I looked at today, or the poem that Anne Marie might have looked at previously. Like spoken word stuff oftentimes has a rhyme to it, and it doesn't sound Dr. Seussy, because they've spent a lot of time um, elevating those rhymes away from like shine and wine or fun and sun, which is what I was thinking of. But moving away from that to more complex rhymes, oftentimes a more complex rhyme does not include one syllable. It's multi-syllable words that rhyme with each other. So those are
I'm
kind
gonna
of some of my
add
thoughts.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
add a link in the chat. It's a video from Vox, and it's on deconstructing the rhyme within rap music. Unfortunately, they don't spotlight a single female rapper in the whole video, which is nonsense because there are so many wonderful female rappers out there who did original work, and their work should be revered and spotlighted. However, it is a very, very interesting video that takes a look at the math of rhyme and how different rappers throughout the decades have integrated their own style into rhyme, and it's really incredible and inspiring to watch. So the one poem that I have that I do rhyme a lot, called Marilyn en Bleu, it was inspired after I watched this video. I wanted to try and include more rhymes, and I use a lot of internal rhyme versus end rhymes on it. But it doesn't have a meter. So it's unmetered, or is that the technical term, unmetered? I'm not sure. It's not, it doesn't have a meter, but it has, and it doesn't have a rhyme scheme, but it includes a lot of rhyme throughout.
Cool. I want to be respectful of folks' time. We are at an hour, but if there are other questions, I've got time to hang out and answer questions. And if there aren't any other questions, I hope you all have there are multiple folks from the East Coast here. Have wonderful evenings, night times, get sleep, find an animal or a human to cuddle with. And I hope you have a really wonderful evening.
And speaking of spoken word poetry, next week, April 13th, we have Christian Perfas, also known as Soul Stuff, who will be here walking us through how he goes about writing his spoken word poems. And he's a published and also not world touring yet, but not yet, country touring spoken word artist. And so it'll be privileged to see his process behind the scenes. So I hope that you can join us for that.
Thanks again for having me, Anne Marie. This was so much fun.
Yes, thank you, Sara Beth. I'm so glad that I was able to join today and that things kind of got rearranged so that I could be here. So it was a privilege to have you, an honor to have you. And it was also really fun and cool to see this new form. And I can't wait to try it out and then tag you on Instagram.
Do it. Have a good night, everyone. Take care.
Bye, everybody.